The ocean has always been humanity's last frontier, vast, cold, and mercilessly silent. Beneath its surface lie relics of wars, sunken cities, and the forgotten remains of those who dared to challenge it. But sometimes, the ocean doesn't just take, it keeps. In 1992, a U.S. Navy submarine, the USS Vanguard, set sail from the Norfolk Naval Base on what was described as a routine mission. 84 crewmen aboard. Experienced officers. State-of-the-art technology. 2 weeks later, it simply disappeared. No distress signal. No debris. Nothing. Families were told it was a catastrophic systems failure. But in the years that followed, whispers began to surface, of secret frequencies, of classified missions, and of something the Navy found and buried. 12 years later, a civilian research vessel stumbled across the wreck, and inside, a letter. A letter written by one of the lost crew, describing their final, horrifying days at the bottom of the world. If you're new here, hit subscribe and stay tuned. Because this story is not just about a missing submarine. It's about what might still be waiting down there. The USS Vanguard departed Norfolk on March 3, 1992. Its purpose was officially listed as a hydroacoustic survey, but among the crew, rumors said otherwise. Some whispered of a new sonar prototype, something capable of detecting silent nuclear vessels across entire oceans. At 6:43 a.m., the submarine slid beneath the Atlantic waves, vanishing into the metallic blue horizon. Families waved goodbye, unaware that it would be the last time they'd see the vessel, or the men aboard, alive. For the first few days, transmissions were normal. Routine reports, navigational updates, morale checks. Then, on March 7th, communications abruptly ceased. No emergency code, no distress call. The Navy's tracking buoys showed the Vanguard's signal drifting off course toward the frigid North Atlantic Trench. When contact wasn't re-established within 24 hours, the Navy declared a Level 3 maritime emergency. Destroyers, reconnaissance planes, and sonar aircraft were dispatched. For weeks they searched, scanning over 100,000 square miles of water. Not even an oil slick. The Vanguard was officially declared lost at sea on April 12. The families received folded flags and carefully worded condolences. The media moved on. But inside the Navy's upper ranks, unease festered. Engineers reviewing the sub's last pings noticed anomalies, sonar distortions so intense they appeared to answer the sub's own pulses. One technician, in a memo that was quickly redacted, described it as an echo that thinks. By summer, the case was quietly buried. And the ocean, cold and indifferent, closed over its newest secret. 12 years after the Vanguard vanished, the world had all but forgotten it. The families had moved on, the Navy had sealed its files, and the ocean had kept its silence. Then, in the winter of 2004, a private research team aboard the vessel Artemis II set out on an unrelated mission, a survey of methane vents near Greenland's continental shelf. The project was headed by Dr. Samuel Greer, a marine engineer with over 20 years of deep-sea exploration experience. Greer's crew wasn't looking for shipwrecks. They were studying thermal currents when their sonar operator, a quiet man named Rafiq al-Masri, noticed an odd signal. A metallic structure, enormous, unnatural, lying nearly 2 miles below the surface. At first, Greer assumed it was a geological anomaly. But as the image cleared on the screen, he saw something unmistakable, the shape of a submarine hull, half buried in the silt. "Could it be one of ours?" someone whispered. "No," Greer said quietly. "It's too deep for a training vessel, and too intact to be World War II." The coordinates placed it hundreds of miles from the Vanguard's last recorded position. Still, something about the size, and the faint outline of the bow numbers, made Greer's stomach tighten. He ordered the team's remotely operated vehicle, ROV Atlas, to descend. It took 6 hours to reach the seafloor, its floodlights cutting through an eternal night. As it approached, The cameras illuminated a haunting sight, a vast submarine resting on its side, the hull covered in white bacterial threads and coral growth. The stenciled letters were faint but legible. USS Vanguard. For a moment, no one spoke. The control room fell silent except for the steady hum of the ROV's motors. Greer exhaled shakily. "We found them." Inside the wreck, the cameras revealed something unusual. The interior was astonishingly well preserved, bulkheads still sealed, personal lockers undisturbed. Near what appeared to be the communications room, the ROV's mechanical arm brushed against a corroded panel that came loose, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, a small watertight case floated free. It was retrieved and brought to the surface after a 30-hour ascent. When the crew opened the case on deck, they found a series of items. A rusted wristwatch stopped at 3:17. Several sheets of water-stained Navy stationery. And a metal container sealed with epoxy. Greer pried it open carefully, expecting technical documents or mission logs. Instead, he found a single folded letter, preserved remarkably well, as if someone had protected it deliberately. The signature at the bottom read, "Lieutenant Commander Eric Rowe." He was the submarine's communications officer. The handwriting was frantic, uneven. Salt had eaten the ink around the edges, but most of it was still legible. Greer read the first few lines, and stopped. His face went pale. "If you find this, tell them we didn't go quiet. The sea didn't take us, something else did." That night, the Artemis II stayed anchored over the wreck. No one could sleep. The ocean below them felt heavier, darker. Greer ordered the letter photographed and scanned, but deep down, he knew the truth. Whatever had happened aboard the Vanguard, it wasn't a simple accident. When they sent the discovery report to the Navy, silence followed. No congratulations. No debrief. Just an automated reply. "Your findings are now classified under Naval Intelligence Review." Within a week, a Navy recovery team arrived and ordered the Artemis II to vacate the area. The wreck was now a government property once again. But Dr. Greer had already made copies of the letter. And one copy, the one that survived, would change everything. When Dr. Samuel Greer and his team first read the letter, they assumed it was the ramblings of a dying man, a final message written under extreme psychological stress. But the more they analyzed it, the more it felt intentional, coherent, almost like a warning. The letter was dated March 18, 1992, 15 days after the USS Vanguard disappeared from radar. That detail alone made no sense. The Navy had long concluded that the submarine suffered an instant implosion due to catastrophic pressure failure. Yet Rowe's letter proved they had survived, for at least 2 weeks, trapped beneath miles of ocean. Greer read it aloud in the dim light of the ship's cabin. The words trembled on his tongue. "If anyone finds this, please know we didn't go silent. The sea isn't empty, it listens. It responds." Eric Rowe began by describing the moment the Vanguard lost contact. They had descended deeper than planned, following sonar readings that didn't match any known vessel signature. Rowe said the signal felt alive. It pulsed in intervals that mirrored the sub's own sonar patterns. When the Vanguard tried to retreat, something began jamming their systems. "The sonar turned against us," Rowe wrote. "Every time we sent a ping, it came back louder, closer. We stopped sending signals, but the sound didn't stop. It was calling back." At first, the crew believed it was interference. Then came the symptoms. Crewmen began complaining of headaches, nosebleeds, and distorted vision. Some claimed to hear voices in the static. One officer swore he heard his wife's voice through the comms, calling his name from the sonar speaker. Commander Halpern ordered the systems shut down. But by then, the psychological toll had set in. "The captain stopped sleeping," Rowe continued. "He started hearing things too. I caught him in the control room whispering to the periscope, saying, It's watching us. Over the next few days, the Vanguard drifted off course. Their oxygen scrubbers began failing, forcing the crew to ration air. But what terrified them most was the sound, a low, rhythmic pulse echoing from outside the hull. At first, it was distant. Then it grew louder. "It's not machinery," Rowe wrote. "It breathes." Greer paused there, staring at the page, unsure if he wanted to keep reading. But curiosity won. He turned to the next section, where Rowe's handwriting became jagged and uneven, as if written in darkness. Day 11. We lost Jenkins today. He tried to open the torpedo hatch. He said he saw light outside. There's no light here. We dragged him back, but his eyes were gone, like he'd stared into the sun. The letter went on to describe an atmosphere of growing paranoia. The crew divided into two groups, those who believed they were experiencing deep-sea psychosis, and those convinced something was communicating with them. Commander Halpern, once rational, began speaking of a signal beneath the ocean floor. He said it wasn't an echo, Rowe wrote. He said we woke something up. By the 12th day, food supplies ran low. The crew sealed the engine room after hearing noises, heavy metallic scraping, as though something massive was crawling along the hull. Rowe described hearing fingernails on steel at night, echoing through the sleeping quarters. I thought the sea was empty. But when I pressed my ear against the wall, I heard whispering, hundreds of voices, all saying the same thing, deeper. The last section of the letter was written in almost perfect penmanship, calm and measured, which made it even more unnerving. We stopped fighting it. The captain says if we go deeper, it will stop. He believes it wants us to follow. I'm not sure he's wrong. We're starting the descent now. If we don't return, tell my wife Eleanor I kept my promise. I didn't die afraid. But I wish I hadn't listened. We're not alone in the dark. When Greer finished reading, no one spoke for a long time. Outside, the sea was calm, but the sound of the waves felt heavier, slower, as if listening. Later that night, one of Greer's technicians swore he heard faint tapping through the ship's hull, 3 slow knocks, repeating every few minutes. When Greer checked, the sonar showed nothing. But in his gut, he knew, the Vanguard was not just a wreck. It was a message. After the discovery of Lieutenant Commander Rowe's letter, public curiosity exploded. News outlets caught wind of a found submarine letter and began speculating wildly. The Navy scrambled to contain the leak, but by then, the story had already reached journalists, conspiracy forums, and families of the lost crew. Under growing pressure, the Navy sanctioned an official recovery operation, Operation Nightfall, a joint mission between military divers and contracted deep-sea technicians. Their objective was simple: descend to the wreck, retrieve whatever remained, and silence public speculation. But nothing about what they found was simple. The mission began in late October 2004. 2 deep-sea drones were deployed, Hermes I and Hermes II. Both were equipped with high-resolution cameras, reinforced lighting, and live-feed transmission. At first, the descent was smooth. The ocean floor appeared calm, the current slow, visibility better than expected. But at 1.8 miles down, the feed began to flicker. Static. Glitches. As though something was distorting the signal. Probably a magnetic anomaly, one technician muttered. But the distortion grew worse as they approached the Vanguard. When the cameras finally stabilized, the image they captured left everyone in the control room frozen. The wreck was too intact. The pressure at that depth should have crushed it beyond recognition, but the hull looked twisted, as if bent by something uneven, not imploded. The command tower was warped, yet the interior bulkheads remained largely sealed. Inside, the camera drifted through tight corridors. Everything was eerily preserved, uniforms folded neatly, coffee mugs still half full, paper reports pinned to walls. It was like time had stopped the moment they vanished. At 2:47 a.m., Hermes I entered the control room. A soft light from its floodlamps revealed a shocking sight. The captain's chair remained bolted in place, with Commander Halpern's skeleton still strapped in, his bony hands gripping the armrests. His head was tilted toward the periscope, as if still watching something. Behind him, several crew members' remains were found huddled near the navigation console. But one detail disturbed everyone. The men weren't positioned randomly. Their bones formed a perfect semicircle, facing the same direction, toward the periscope. The ROV zoomed closer. The glass of the periscope lens was cracked, from inside. A technician watching the live feed whispered, "Play that back." When they did, they saw movement. At the edge of the frame, just for a second, something passed behind the camera. A shape, vaguely human, drifting weightlessly through the control room. It moved too fluidly, too intentionally to be debris. But when the operator rewound again, it was gone. Then they discovered something even stranger. Near the captain's console lay a small video recorder, half buried under a collapsed panel. The Navy divers retrieved it manually and sent it to the surface. It took weeks to restore, but when analysts played the footage, they realized they were watching the final hours of the Vanguard. The screen flickered to life, time-stamped March 17, 1992, 10:31 p.m. The control room was dim, illuminated only by red emergency lights. Crew members moved quickly, arguing in the background. The audio was fractured, but fragments were clear enough. Pressure rising. Sonars still responding. Shut it off, for God's sake, shut it off. The camera panned toward Commander Halpern. He was standing near the periscope, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his temples. He looked entranced. "It's calling," he muttered. "It's beneath us. It wants us to see." One officer tried to pull him away, but Halpern shoved him aside and pressed his eye to the periscope. For several seconds, the room was silent. Then Halpern whispered, barely audible, "It's beautiful." Moments later, the alarms blared again. The hull began to groan, a metallic screeching so violent the camera trembled. One of the crew screamed, "We're going down! We're going down!" The footage erupted into chaos, men shouting, lights flickering, static cutting in and out. Then, just before the tape ended, the camera caught one final image. Through the periscope lens, in the brief flash of red emergency light, something vast moved outside the submarine, a shadow bigger than the vessel itself, circling slowly. And just before the image dissolved into white noise, a low, guttural sound filled the audio, a pulse, rhythmic and alive, matching the same frequencies Lieutenant Rowe described in his letter. The analysts who reviewed the footage were ordered to sign lifetime confidentiality agreements. But leaks have a way of escaping. Within months, 30 seconds of the footage appeared online. The video, titled "It's Calling Us Deeper," circulated briefly before disappearing from every platform. Those who managed to watch it claimed the audio contained subliminal frequencies, and that some viewers reported nausea, migraines, and vivid dreams of drowning. The Navy issued no statement. The recovery files were sealed under national security. But among the few who saw the original tape, one detail was never forgotten. The final frame, frozen in the last second of footage, showed Commander Halpern staring into the periscope, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Behind him, barely visible, reflected in the lens, was another face. Pale, eyeless, human-shaped, watching him. Within 48 hours of Operation Nightfall's broadcast feed being terminated, every diver, technician, and analyst involved was summoned to an off-site Navy facility. Phones were confiscated. Digital drives were wiped. What had begun as a standard recovery had become a classified event overnight. The official statement released to the public was short and sterile. During a scheduled recovery, remnants of the USS Vanguard were located. No recoverable remains were found. Cause of loss remains undetermined. But everyone who had witnessed the feed knew that was a lie. They'd seen the intact skeletons, the periscope damage, and the shape moving in the darkness. Inside the facility, interrogations ran around the clock. The divers were questioned separately, repeatedly asked if they had copied or transmitted anything. Most insisted they hadn't. By the third day, one technician, Evan Stroud, operator of Hermes I, was quietly dismissed from duty and vanished from all Navy records. Suppressed evidence. Before the purge, a few still photographs from the live feed were automatically cached to a backup server. Among them, the captain's skeletal remains at the command chair. The crew's semicircular formation. A single blurred frame that showed the reflection in the periscope lens, faint, but unmistakably humanoid. Those images never reached public archives. Instead, they were absorbed into a classified folder labeled Vanguard/Anomaly Report Delta 32. A junior intelligence clerk later confessed under anonymity that the attached report described possible biological or non-human presence and recommended total data destruction to prevent mass panic. The order was signed by Admiral L.R. Hayes. The family's rebellion. While the Navy tightened its silence, the families of the lost crew refused to let the story die. Widows, sons, and retired sailors organized weekly vigils in Norfolk, holding candles and homemade posters that read, "We deserve the truth." Among them was Eleanor Halpern, the late commander's wife. In televised interviews, her voice shook but her eyes never blinked. "My husband sent me letters before that last voyage. He wrote about strange signals they were tracking. The Navy said it was classified sonar testing. But if that's true, why did they erase his name?" Her persistence began attracting journalists. By early 2005, an investigative reporter named Martin Keene published an article titled "The Vanished Vanguard: Silence Below." Within days of publication, Keene's apartment was broken into, his computers stolen, and his story scrubbed from the paper's website. He later told colleagues, "It wasn't a robbery. They only wanted the files." Leaked memo. In June 2005, an anonymous PDF circulated across naval forums, Memo 7B, allegedly written by a defense analyst. It contained one chilling paragraph. Acoustic analysis of Tape 17, Vanguard Incident, reveals frequencies matching neither marine life nor mechanical interference. Patterns suggest cognitive mimicry. Recommend permanent containment of remaining evidence. The memo ended with a warning. If re-exposed, subjects may experience auditory hallucinations. Frequencies appear self-replicating. The Navy labeled the document a fabrication. But experts noticed the formatting matched authentic Department of Defense memos from that period. Psychological fallout. By late 2006, several members of Operation Nightfall began reporting insomnia, recurring dreams, and a persistent low hum they claimed to hear even in silence. Medical evaluations found no physiological cause. One diver described it best. "It's like the ocean's still talking to me. Sometimes it says my name." Within a year, 2 of them were committed to a naval psychiatric ward. Another, the mission's lead engineer, disappeared from his home, leaving only a note that read, "It followed me back." The rewrite. When media interest reignited in 2007, the Navy released a glossy documentary, The Lost Submarine: Engineering Lessons of the Vanguard. It depicted the tragedy as a mechanical failure, a valve malfunction, an unfortunate implosion. All traces of the letter, the footage, and the periscope anomaly were erased from the narrative. The narrator's voice was calm, reassuring, almost paternal. The Vanguard will be remembered as a testament to human bravery beneath the waves. The public accepted the explanation. Mostly because among the few surviving crew families, whispers persisted that before the footage disappeared, someone had copied it. Someone who intended to show the world what was really seen under 2 miles of water. A technician watching the live feed whispered, "Play that back." When they did, they saw movement. At the edge of the frame, Just for a second, something passed behind the camera. A shape, vaguely human, drifting weightlessly through the control room. It moved too fluidly, too intentionally to be debris. But when the operator rewound again, it was gone. By 2010, almost everyone involved in Operation Nightfall had either vanished, resigned, or been silenced under the guise of classified reassignment. But one man remained, Chief Engineer Daniel Mercer, a civilian consultant specializing in submersible telemetry. He had been responsible for maintaining the Hermes 2 drone, the one that lost signal seconds before the Erie movement was captured. 4 years, Mercer kept quiet. But after his wife's death in 2009 and being diagnosed with terminal lung disease, he no longer cared about the Navy's threats. He began reaching out to journalists, saying only one phrase in his emails. "It's not gone. It's still transmitting." The hidden transmission. Mercer met with investigative reporter Martin Keene, the same man whose previous Vanguard article had been erased. The meeting took place in a worn-down motel near Annapolis. Keene recorded everything. Mercer was gaunt, his hands trembling as he slid an old hard drive across the table. "I made a duplicate," he said, "before they wiped the mainframe. There's data the Navy didn't know existed, and it's still active." Keene frowned. "Still active? How?" Mercer explained that when Hermes 2 went offline, its emergency beacon switched to an independent power supply. That beacon was designed to ping once every 48 hours, until retrieved. But instead of stopping, the beacon continued broadcasting for 12 years. And every transmission carried the same pattern, a rhythmic pulse, matching human speech cadence. Not Morse. Not sonar. Something else. The unheard message. Mercer played a recording from the hard drive. At first, it sounded like static. Then came the faint repetition, a deep, distorted thud spaced evenly apart. Thud, thud, thud. Between each pulse, a whispering distortion emerged, like a voice struggling to form through water. Slowed down and filtered, the voice became almost intelligible. The transcription Keene published later contained only 6 words. "We see you. It's beautiful here." Mercer paused the audio. His eyes watered. "That's Halpern's voice," he said quietly. "I worked with him. That's him, 12 years after he died." The shadow on the footage. The hard drive also contained an extended fragment of the original recovered footage, the portion allegedly destroyed in 2004. The clip began where the public leak had ended, the moment Commander Halpern looked through the periscope. But this time, the feed didn't cut to static. It continued. Halpern's breathing quickened. Behind him, the crew screamed as alarms blared. Then, through the periscope's cracked glass, a figure came into focus, pale, translucent, and vaguely human-shaped. Its features shifted, as if made of light refracted through water. It hovered outside the submarine, motionless, before slowly placing what looked like a hand on the hull. The hull responded. The metal rippled, not broke, but melted inward, like liquid reacting to sound waves. Halpern's voice trembled. "It wants inside." The camera dropped. Static. A final flash of light. Then, black. Mercer's confession. After showing Keene the footage, Mercer looked terrified. "That thing down there, it wasn't hostile. It was curious. The frequency wasn't random. It was a signal. It wanted communication. But we panicked. We called it an anomaly. We destroyed the only connection humanity ever made beneath the abyss." He leaned forward. "But it's not over. The signal's getting stronger. It's coming closer to the continental shelf." Keene published fragments of Mercer's account in an online forum under an alias. 2 days later, Mercer's motel room was found empty. No signs of struggle. His laptop, phone, and hard drive were gone. On the motel nightstand, however, lay a small note written in shaky handwriting. I heard it again. It said my name this time. The return of the signal. By mid-2011, independent sonar hobbyists off the Atlantic coast began reporting strange frequency interference in open waters. Fishermen claimed their radios emitted low, pulsing tones for minutes at a time. Marine biologists detected abnormal pressure zones, circular, rhythmic, and moving westward, as though something enormous were migrating slowly toward land. When reporters questioned the Navy, the response was brief. No unusual activity detected. Civilian misreadings are common. But leaked radar data later confirmed that anomalous sonar reflections had indeed been recorded, originating near the Vanguard's final coordinates. The data's code name was chillingly familiar: Project Echo Deep. Keen's last message. On December 19, 2011, journalist Martin Keen uploaded a 12-minute video titled The Last Survivor's Proof. He spoke quickly, looking over his shoulder. If you're watching this, they know where I am. The sound isn't gone. It's calling to anyone who listens long enough. Don't download the file. Don't play the recording out loud. The video cut abruptly after he turned toward the sound of knocking at his door. The footage ended there. That was the last time anyone saw Martin Keen alive. His YouTube channel, his backup drives, and even cached versions of the video were erased within hours, as though the internet itself refused to remember. But those who had downloaded it before it vanished said that, in the last second of the clip, there was a faint echo, a whisper beneath the static. We're still here. For over a decade, the Atlantic had remained quiet. Then, in 2015, everything changed. Off the coast of Nova Scotia, a privately funded deep-sea exploration company, Blue Path Marine, began surveying the ocean floor for new mineral deposits. They used state-of-the-art sonar technology, more advanced than anything available in 2004, capable of mapping topography 6 miles below. On the third week of the mission, their sonar picked up something impossible: a rhythmic signal, deep and consistent, pulsing every 30 seconds. At first, the team assumed it was geological activity. But when they enhanced the signal, they discovered a pattern within the noise, the exact same frequency range recorded by Operation Nightfall. The Vanguard's ghost had awakened. The resonance. Lead technician Dr. Laura Nemesek led the analysis. She noticed that the sound wasn't echoing, it was resonating, meaning it wasn't bouncing off surfaces. It was originating from somewhere. The pulse, when mapped, formed concentric circles on the sonar display, like ripples from a single point far below. Coordinates confirmed it. The signal was coming directly from the Vanguard wreck site. Dr. Nemesek checked historical logs. The wreck had been sealed and classified. No active beacon, no power sources, no moving equipment. And yet, something beneath it was transmitting. When she reported the findings, the company ordered the team to continue. They didn't know what they were about to uncover. The dives. The first dive was routine. 2 drones descended into the abyss, their lights slicing through darkness thicker than night. For nearly an hour, everything looked ordinary: sand, rock, old coral. Then the first anomaly appeared. The seabed began to move. At first, it seemed like shifting sand. But when the cameras zoomed in, they saw textures, intricate, scale-like patterns, shifting as if the ground itself was breathing. Moments later, one of the drones, Blue Path 04, lost control. Its lights flickered, and its telemetry spiked. Before shutting down, it captured a single frame. A metallic structure rising slightly from beneath the wreck, smooth, curved, almost organic. Like a shell. Dr. Nemesek froze. That's not part of the submarine. Echo contagion. Back on the surface, technicians monitoring the live audio began feeling dizzy. Their instruments buzzed with low-frequency interference that made the walls vibrate. One operator clutched his headphones, shouting that he could hear voices behind the pulse. When the playback was slowed and filtered, the words became faintly audible. You shouldn't have come back." The crew laughed it off as pareidolia, the brain finding patterns in noise. But later that night, several team members reported identical nightmares. They were underwater, standing on the ocean floor, staring up at a faint red glow pulsing above them. In the dream, the glow whispered, "Breathe deeper." Government intervention. 3 days later, a U.S. Navy vessel appeared unannounced near Blue Patha's coordinates. Officials boarded the research ship, confiscated equipment, and informed Dr. Nemesek that her expedition had interfered with protected wreckage. They sealed all data drives and ordered an immediate shutdown of operations. Before leaving, one of the Navy officers quietly told her, "Ma'am, you didn't discover this. You just woke it up." When the crew returned to port, they found their records wiped. No sonar maps, no logs, no official acknowledgement that the mission had ever occurred. But Dr. Nemesek had saved one copy, a personal backup hidden in her dive notebook. Inside was a still image from the final seconds of the drone feed. The submarine wreck, and beneath it, faint outlines of something massive unfurling. Like wings. The pattern expands. Over the next months, oceanographic sensors across the North Atlantic began registering identical pulses. Cargo ships reported equipment malfunctions. Submarines in nearby routes experienced sudden navigation errors, as if compasses spun in circles. Marine wildlife fled the region, large-scale migration shifts caught on satellite imaging. At night, coastal towns near Nova Scotia reported faint hums vibrating through the water pipes, audible only in absolute silence. Locals called it the Deep Song. And then came the disappearances. 2 fishing vessels, Asteria and Solange, vanished within the same week. No distress calls. No debris. But days later, both ships' black boxes were found floating, still recording. Each one captured the same final sound. A low, rhythmic pulse followed by a whispering voice. "We remember you." The return of the Vanguard. In early 2016, satellite imaging captured something extraordinary. The Vanguard's wreck had shifted position, over 200 meters east of its last recorded coordinates. Experts called it an underwater landslide. But when one marine geologist enhanced the thermal data, the truth emerged. The movement wasn't caused by sediment displacement. The ground beneath the submarine had opened. The structure below, whatever it was, appeared to be slowly rising, as if responding to the same frequency that once drove its crew insane. The unknown signal. When Dr. Nemesek analyzed the latest data before it was seized, she found that the frequency of the pulses had evolved. They now carried a repeating pattern, a binary translation that, when decoded, revealed a simple but chilling phrase. "Surface soon." The message repeated every 47 seconds. Then, as the pulse ended one final time, the sensors recorded something that no one could explain, a sudden spike of energy, stronger than any natural seismic event, originating directly beneath the Atlantic Trench. For 12 minutes, every sonar buoy within 500 miles went dark. When systems came back online, the pulse was gone. Silence. But the Vanguard was no longer visible on sonar. It had vanished. By 2017, silence had settled across the Atlantic. For months, nothing stirred. No signal, no strange frequencies, no trace of the Vanguard. Then, in the spring of that year, coastal sensors along the eastern seaboard began detecting subtle distortions again. Faint, rhythmic vibrations echoing through the ocean floor, traveling farther inland each time. At first, the signals were harmless. Just data anomalies. Then animals began reacting. Whales beached themselves in dozens. Schools of fish surfaced lifeless, their inner ears ruptured. Fishermen off the coast of Maine reported that the ocean had gone quiet, as if all life below had vanished. And at midnight on June 9th, every seismograph along the North Atlantic registered a synchronized tremor, perfectly timed, like the beat of a living heart. The phenomenon spreads. Satellite monitoring stations around the world began receiving similar reports. From the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, sonar buoys transmitted the same frequency, the Vanguard pulse. Only now, it was louder, deeper, and layered with something new. A sub-frequency shaped like speech. When decoded, the transmission contained a chilling fragment in human vocal range. "You opened the door." By the end of the month, every deep-sea communication cable in the Northern Hemisphere experienced simultaneous interference, causing partial blackouts in global data traffic. Engineers at first suspected cyber attacks. But the interference wasn't digital, it was acoustic. Sound itself was carrying code. The return of the lost. In July, strange reports began emerging from coastal villages. Fishermen claimed to see pale figures standing waist-deep in the surf at night, motionless, staring toward the horizon. When approached, they vanished beneath the waves, leaving no footprints. One photo captured by a security camera near a dock in Ireland showed what appeared to be a naval uniform, half-decayed, clinging to a human silhouette just before it sank into the water. Analysts enhanced the image. The insignia on the sleeve read, "Vanguard." DNA tests on tissue samples recovered from nearby confirmed the impossible. The material was human, but not decomposed. It had been preserved as if frozen in pressure miles beneath the surface. Dr. Nemesek's broadcast. After years of silence, Dr. Laura Nemesek reappeared. She uploaded a video to an encrypted science forum, time-stamped August 2, 2017. Her face looked hollow, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. "They think it's a natural resonance. It's not. The signal is alive. The wreck didn't disappear, it transformed. It's transmitting across every medium now: water, air, radio. I think it's trying to synchronize with us." She leaned closer to the camera. "It's learning our language." Before the video cut off, a faint sound filled the audio, the low, rhythmic pulse of the Vanguard, rising steadily until it distorted her voice entirely. Her account was deleted 12 hours later. The global interference. By October, the echo phenomenon, as it came to be known, became a worldwide event. Air traffic control systems reported compass failures. Military submarines refused to dive below certain depths, citing psychological disturbances among crew. Civilians began uploading videos of strange noises emanating from drains, sewers, and pipes, deep hums vibrating through infrastructure connected to the ocean. Oceanographers theorized that the sound waves had penetrated continental crusts, converting solid ground into a temporary resonator. Others said the world was simply hearing what the deep had always been singing. The vanishing of the Vanguard Memorial. On December 13, 2017, the 25th anniversary of the Vanguard's disappearance, the Navy unveiled a new memorial at Norfolk Base. It was a marble monument engraved with all 84 crew names. That night, during the ceremony, a strange vibration rippled through the harbor water. The memorial lights flickered. Witnesses said they heard voices carried on the wind, hundreds whispering in unison, like chanting underwater. Moments later, the power grid collapsed. When emergency lights returned, the memorial stone was gone. Only a crater remained, its surface damp, the air filled with a faint metallic hum. Security footage from the event showed the monument disintegrating, each letter of the crew's names glowing faintly before vanishing. Forensic analysis later revealed a trace of saltwater residue inside the crater. Whispers in the static. Radio operators worldwide began intercepting fragmented messages hidden inside the global pulse. Most were unintelligible, but one fragment repeated every night at exactly 3:11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. "We are awake." Acoustic engineers noticed something more disturbing. The message didn't originate from a single point. It came from every ocean simultaneously. Scientists proposed that the entire planet's water mass was resonating like a unified instrument. But one cryptographer, working independently, made a darker observation. When the pulses were translated into spectrogram images, the waveform resembled a human face. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open, as if the ocean itself was preparing to speak. The return transmission. In early 2018, seafloor sensors captured a new pulse sequence, not outbound, but inbound. Something was replying. The return signal originated from outer orbit, then refracted downward into the Atlantic. It was short, only 3 seconds long, but when converted to binary, it spelled 2 words. Surface confirmed. After that, all underwater communications went silent. The night the sea glowed. On February 4, 2018, satellites detected massive bioluminescent blooms spreading across the mid-Atlantic trench. The glow covered an area larger than Manhattan, pulsating in perfect rhythm, a final heartbeat of the deep. Cargo ships passing nearby reported a faint humming beneath the hull, and crew members described seeing faint silhouettes moving under the surface, like hands pressing upward against the water. At 2:17 a.m., the pulse stopped. Every sensor on Earth went quiet. Then, for exactly 9 minutes, the entire Atlantic shimmered with pale light. It was visible from space. And when it finally faded, sonar readings confirmed what no one wanted to believe. A massive structure had broken free from the trench floor. The shape matched the outline of the USS Vanguard. Only now, it was moving. The morning of February 5, 2018, began like any other along the coast of Nova Scotia. Gray skies, restless waves, and fog rolling in from the Atlantic. But by 7:43 a.m., every radar station along the eastern seaboard detected something rising from beneath the water. It started as a faint metallic echo, climbing from 12,000 feet to 6,000 in less than 3 minutes. Then, the sonar image sharpened. A mass of steel and shadow, nearly identical to the USS Vanguard. It was coming back. The unexplainable ascent. Rescue and defense units scrambled, assuming an undersea landslide or volcanic eruption. But no natural event behaved this way. The object ascended in perfect, controlled motion, steady, deliberate, as if guided. At 9:12 a.m., satellites confirmed visual contact. Through a thick layer of mist, the Atlantic surface erupted, water displaced by a towering form breaking through the waves. For a moment, the fog parted just enough for cameras to capture it. A black, corroded hull emerging from the ocean, tilted at a steep angle, its nameplate still faintly legible beneath layers of marine growth. USS Vanguard. But something was wrong. The submarine was far larger than its original blueprint. Sections of the hull appeared fused with organic material, ridged, translucent panels that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Witness accounts. Fishermen 50 miles off the coast were the first to see it clearly. They described a sound like 1,000 whales crying at once, followed by waves that nearly capsized their boats. One survivor told reporters later, "It wasn't floating, it was breathing. The metal, it moved like lungs." When a Coast Guard chopper approached, its navigation systems malfunctioned. The pilot reported heavy interference and a magnetic pull that threw the aircraft off course. Before losing transmission, his final words were caught on radio. "There's light coming from inside the hull. It's moving." The global blackout. At 9:37 a.m., a massive electromagnetic surge emanated from the wreck. Power grids across eastern Canada and the northeastern U.S. flickered out in seconds. Communications failed. Satellites lost visual feed. For 6 minutes, the Atlantic was swallowed by static. When power returned, the Vanguard had vanished again. Only a whirlpool of dark water remained, vast, silent, slowly closing. But ships in nearby sectors began receiving automatic distress pings, dozens of them, all broadcasting the same distress ID. USS Vanguard, crew alive. Recovered audio. The pings contained an audio file, low quality but unmistakable. A male voice, hoarse, gasping, spoke through heavy distortion. We waited. It showed us. You shouldn't have called it. A second voice followed, calm, detached, whispering from a distance. We are not the same anymore. After that, the signal disintegrated into low-frequency hums matching the original 1992 sonar readings. Government containment. By noon, naval destroyers had formed a blockade around the re-emergence zone. Airspace was restricted. No footage left the area. Hours later, an emergency press conference was broadcast. The Navy spokesperson read from a carefully worded statement. Earlier today, seismic activity caused a disturbance in a deep-sea grave site related to the USS Vanguard. There is no credible evidence of any vessel resurfacing. But satellite imagery leaked that night told another story. Photos taken by a European weather satellite showed an enormous object partially surfaced off the coast, exactly where the Vanguard was last detected. The next day, the satellite feed went dark. Civilian contact. 3 days later, a small cargo ship, the Alara, traveling near the restricted zone, reported seeing something adrift at dawn. It was a life raft, old, barnacle-encrusted, and impossibly dated. Painted on its side in faded white were the words, Vanguard, 03 Escape Pod. Inside were 2 decomposed bodies, both wearing decayed naval uniforms. Forensic results were inconclusive. The DNA matched no living records. But a soaked logbook found in the raft survived long enough to be partially translated. One page read, "We heard them singing under the hull. They weren't screams. They were calling us home." Another note, barely legible. "The captain said it isn't the ocean anymore. It's a mouth. The new signal." By March, the pulse returned, but now it wasn't coming from the ocean floor. It was broadcasting from the sky. Radio astronomers in Chile and Greenland recorded identical transmissions echoing across the upper atmosphere. When decoded, the pulse formed repeating binary loops, sequences that translated to coordinates on Earth. The coordinates pointed to one location, the original Vanguard disappearance site, March 1992, the same place where, 12 years later, their letter was found. The observation. In April 2018, a satellite over the North Atlantic captured its final image before transmission failure. The photo showed a massive ring forming in the water, a perfect circle of faint luminescent waves spiraling outward. At the center of the ring, something massive hovered just beneath the surface, outlined by faint red light. Analysts enhanced the image. The outline was unmistakable. The USS Vanguard, upright, intact, and glowing from within, as if powered by something far beyond human design. One scientist who reviewed the image privately remarked, "It looks less like a vessel and more like an embryo." Within hours, every copy of the photo vanished from data archives. The final broadcast. On April 19th, a brief worldwide transmission interrupted multiple TV and radio signals for 17 seconds. A low hum filled the airwaves, followed by static and a deep, aquatic voice repeating a single phrase. "We're coming up." That night, several coastal monitoring stations reported faint lights flickering beneath the ocean, as though the sea itself was breathing again. And somewhere in the Atlantic fog, sonar buoys recorded one final pulse. Surface confirmed. Then, absolute silence. The next morning, satellites showed calm, empty ocean. No wreckage. No signals. No Vanguard. But along beaches from Ireland to Massachusetts, people awoke to a strange sight. Small, metallic fragments, smooth, curved, and faintly warm to the touch, scattered along the shoreline. Analysis revealed they weren't made of any known alloy, and embedded on each fragment was a single marking, V12. The year after the Vanguard's resurfacing, the world quietly entered a new age of silence. Every major oceanic agency, NOAA, the Royal Navy, the Russian Northern Fleet, issued orders to restrict deep-water expeditions below 6,000 feet. No one said why. But everyone already knew. Beneath the still surface of the Atlantic, something had awakened. The fragments. When the metallic fragments washed ashore, governments dismissed them as debris from an experimental drone. But independent researchers began collecting samples before the cleanup crews arrived. Under microscopes, the material revealed microscopic ridges that pulsed faintly when exposed to moisture, as though alive. Chemically, it was impossible. 68% titanium, 24% carbon, 8% unknown lattice compound. A physicist from MIT, Dr. Tessa Lang, made a chilling discovery. When she placed one fragment in a saltwater tank, it began to emit low-frequency vibrations every 12 hours. Spectrograph analysis showed the frequency wasn't random. It formed patterns, binary code. After 6 days, the code translated into a single phrase. Open the hatch. The frequency returns. By mid-2019, radio observatories across the globe detected synchronized pulses matching the Vanguard's original sonar ID. But the origin point was everywhere at once: Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, even Arctic. Scientists called it the synchronous hum. Ordinary citizens simply called it the calling. People living near coastlines began hearing it in their sleep, rhythmic thuds, soft metallic tones echoing like heartbeats underwater. And then came the dreams. Witnesses from 5 continents described the same nightmare, standing inside a submarine corridor filled with black water, hearing voices whisper in a language no human spoke. Each dream ended the same way, a heavy door closing, followed by silence. The imitation. Weeks later, coastal communities began reporting sightings, unmarked submarines drifting silently near shorelines, surfacing without flags or lights. When approached, they submerged instantly. Fishermen described the sound beneath them as breathing steel. Satellite images showed faint bioluminescent trails forming enormous circular patterns across oceans. Scientists compared the formations to synaptic networks, the kind found in a human brain. The ocean wasn't just moving. It was thinking. The broadcast. On July 3, 2021, every major communications satellite on Earth was hijacked for exactly 37 seconds. Televisions, radios, phones, all flickered to life with the same image. A blurred figure sitting at a control panel inside a submarine. Through static, a human voice spoke, eerily calm. "We tried to warn you. We tried to close it. But you built more vessels, and it followed the signals. The deep is awake now. It remembers what we taught it." The feed ended abruptly. Experts confirmed the voice belonged to Captain Miles Harding, commanding officer of the Vanguard, missing for 29 years. The transformation. In the following months, ocean temperatures spiked abnormally in specific regions that matched the Vanguard's last known routes. Marine life began vanishing. Entire species of fish disappeared overnight. And sonar buoys started recording new formations rising from the depths, symmetrical, circular, expanding outward like coral or architecture. Oceanographers began referring to it as the Deep City. Structures taller than skyscrapers, emitting low hums in harmonic patterns. No diver ever returned from its perimeter. The final transmission. At 3:19 a.m. on April 12, 2024, exactly 32 years after the Vanguard vanished, one final signal echoed through every naval frequency on Earth. It wasn't binary. It wasn't English. It was music. Low, haunting, rhythmic, like a heartbeat through metal. Embedded in the waveform, analysts discovered faint Morse code repeating every 22 seconds. "We are surface now." The message was traced to multiple sources across all oceans. No single origin. As if the sea itself was transmitting. The ocean breathes. The next morning, satellites recorded something extraordinary. All across the globe, faint circular ripples formed on the surface of every ocean simultaneously. Each ripple expanding outward, slow, steady, synchronized. As the waves calmed, Ships at sea reported sudden, dead silence. No radio static. No wind. No life. Just the sound of water inhaling. Moments later, sonar buoys picked up the unmistakable rhythm of machinery beneath the waves, millions of metallic pulses beating as one. And then, everything stopped. The ocean went still. No hum. No sound. For the first time in history, the sea was utterly silent. Epilogue: The New Frontier. 3 months later, a team of explorers found a single object washed ashore on the coast of Ireland. A sealed metal capsule, its surface marked V13. Inside was a waterproof log recorder. When powered, it played the final entry from the Vanguard's black box. We thought the ocean swallowed us. But it only wanted to listen. And now, it's repeating what we said. The recording ends with a deep rumble and a voice whispering, identical to the one from the 2018 broadcast. Surface confirmed. Then, silence. The sea remains calm to this day. But along certain coastlines, locals say that if you listen closely at night, you can still hear it. The steady rhythm of metal breathing beneath the waves. Maybe some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Maybe the ocean doesn't just hold our history. Maybe it remembers us. Every vessel that vanishes, every signal that fades beneath the waves, becomes part of something deeper. Something that watches, listens, and waits. The USS Vanguard might have been just one ship. But what if it was only the beginning? What if the ocean isn't our final frontier, but our reflection? A mirror showing us what happens when we reach too far into places that were never meant to answer back. As always, thank you for watching. If you found this story chilling, mysterious, or thought-provoking, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes, the scariest truths are the ones still echoing beneath the deep.